My name is Raylan Donovan, 32 years old, firstborn of the Donovan family, former cadet of the ROC. The girl they quietly erased from every photo, every record, every story they told at the dinner table. 6 years ago, they said I broke under pressure, that I walked away from duty, that I was never meant for the uniform. But I didn't walk away. I was erased. Not by failure, but by family. Now I'm back. Not for their apologies, not for their pride. I came back to close the file they thought they had buried, with me still inside it. They said I could come home. They just didn't save me a seat. The gravel crunched beneath my boots as I stepped into the driveway, the same one I'd pulled away from 10 years ago. One duffel bag and a world of fury in tow. The house stood unchanged, white paint peeling near the eaves, wind chimes that never sang anymore, and a porch that had never been mine to sit on. I caught sight of my reflection in the front window. Plain gray shirt, jeans, 2 years too old, no medals, no insignia. Just Ray. Inside, laughter rippled through the open windows, warm and effervescent like carbonated sugar. Mom's voice rose above the others. "Casey, honey, bring out your diploma. Let your uncle see the gold seal." They didn't notice me when I stepped through the front door. Or if they did, they pretended not to. That was our family's specialty, pretending I didn't exist. Aunt Marla gave me a nod, the kind people reserve for janitors or strangers in elevators. Uncle Drew looked over, squinting slightly, then turned back to his plate. Casey, radiant in a white floral dress, didn't glance up. My sister. My replacement. "Ray," Mom finally said, not with warmth, but obligation. "Can you grab more plates from the cabinet?" We ran out. I didn't speak, just moved to the kitchen. Same old laminate counters, same drawer with a broken handle. I laid out the plates in perfect stacks, knowing full well no one would thank me. I turned to find my place at the table. There wasn't one. Not a folded napkin with my name. Not even a stool. Mom caught my eye. "There are folding chairs on the porch," she said, casual, like telling someone where to find the sugar. I stepped outside. The air was sharp for September. A northern wind carried dust and silence. I unfolded one of the rusty chairs, its metal arms stinging cold through my sleeve, and placed it just out of the patio's warm halo of string lights. From there, I had the perfect view. Casey at the center, Mom beaming. Everyone gathered close, except me. Always except me. They toasted. "To Casey," someone said. Laughter followed like a chorus. I remembered the last time we'd done this, when I graduated top of my ROTC class. There had been no party, only a phone call that night. Mom's voice clipped and bitter. "You've embarrassed the family." The glass in Casey's hand caught the light as she raised it again. Mom's eyes shone with pride, watching her golden daughter soak up praise. I exhaled slowly, letting the wind carry away what I couldn't say. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out. Fort Maxon, observation reinstated. Code PHX-3. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second too long. My heart didn't race. It never did anymore. But something beneath my skin shifted, like old steel waking. I stood slowly. From the corner of her eye, Casey noticed me for the first time all evening. She smiled, small and smug, the kind that says, "You should be grateful we let you come." I didn't return it. I slid my phone into my jacket, turned away from the lights, and walked off the porch into the shadows. No goodbye. No sound of the chair folding behind me. My family forgot me years ago, but Fort Maxon never did. 2/2. The moment he saluted, the world forgot who they thought I was. The sun bore down on Fort Maxon like it was trying to scorch the memory of last night's backyard from my skin. I adjusted my sunglasses, let the edge of my black jacket brush against the bleachers, and kept my distance. From here, the training field looked like a movie set. Symmetrical, composed, clean, perfect for illusion. Casey was barking commands at the recruits, her voice loud, clipped, overconfident. She moved like she owned the air around her. The trainees followed her steps with awe. I didn't blame them. She was good. Just not tested. Behind the VIP stand, I stood in the shade cast by a red-white awning. No one noticed me, just the way I preferred. The heat shimmered off the field as boots stomped in unison. I watched quietly, hands behind my back, heels planted on the concrete like anchors. Then Hill's voice sliced through the air. "And that, cadets, is how you approach." He paused mid-word. His gaze had found me. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. The breeze stilled. The cadence of marching feet stuttered, then stopped altogether. He stepped forward like someone approaching sacred ground. His spine straightened with military precision. And then he saluted. Full, unquestionable, flawless. "General Donovan, ma'am." The words cracked the field like a gunshot. Silence fell so hard you could hear a pin drop on asphalt. Casey turned instinctively at the shift in energy, eyes narrowing. She spotted me, and the salute. Her jaw tensed, hand frozen mid-gesture with the practice weapon. The plastic gun slipped from her fingers, hitting the ground with a dull thud. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost. My boots didn't move. My mouth barely did. "Off duty," I said, voice calm and even. "Let's keep it quiet." Hill nodded once and stepped back, his posture never breaking. No one else moved. The recruits gawked, eyes ping-ponging between me and Casey like they couldn't decide whether this was a drill or a hallucination. I turned. Let them wonder. Let the questions fester. My shadow stretched across the edge of the pavement as I walked away. Not fast, not slow, just certain. I passed two lieutenants who stiffened as I went by, whispering behind me. Their voices didn't matter. The silence I'd left behind spoke louder. When I reached the Jeep parked just beyond the field, I opened the door and slid inside. The engine hadn't cooled from the drive. My phone buzzed in the console. "Breached protocol. Source, ROC training dorm. Code, your old ID." So the game had already begun. She thought it was just an old USB. She opened a ghost. Casey shut the dorm door softly behind her, her heart still rattling from the events of that morning. Her hands trembled as she unzipped the old gym bag, the one Ray had given her months ago. No, longer than that. Maybe a year. It had smelled like sweat and desert sun, and she'd never used it. Just stuffed it in the back of her closet. Now, in a half-daze, she was unpacking it, looking for something, anything, that would explain why a seasoned sergeant had saluted her sister like she was some kind of war god. She reached into the side pocket and pulled out a small, scuffed USB drive. Metallic. Weighty in a way no cheap promotional drive ever felt. She frowned. Ray's voice echoed in her memory, flippant, almost dismissive. "It's nothing. Just use it." Casey plugged it into her laptop. The screen went dark for 2 seconds, then lit up with white silent text. "Accessing PHX3/clearance shadow only/DOD internal." Her mouth went dry. She moved the cursor. Too slow, too late. Verifying ID, General Ray Donovan. Status, retired. ID SHDW113, and then the screen flickered black. At that exact moment, across the base, a shrill alarm pierced the stillness like a scalpel. Red lights washed over the ROC buildings. Security shutters thudded into place. And somewhere underground, a silent server recorded the breach. At Fort Maxon, Ray's office lit up in blue. Not the soft hue of mood lighting, but the sterile glow of emergency protocol. She was already halfway to the strategy room before her name finished echoing from the intercom. Inside, the air was sterile, tight, humming with unspoken panic. Column Selena Ward stood at the far end of the glass table, her arms crossed like twin blades. Her dark uniform was spotless, her jaw set. "General Donovan," she said, not offering a seat. "Your access just attempted to retrieve restricted PHX3 files." Ray's voice was steady. "That ID was burned 6 years ago." Ward tapped a screen. It flared to life. The access log blinked red at the top. SHDW 113, login attempt detected, Chach, Rosi dorm. Then explain this. Silence thickened the room. 3 advisors shifted in their seats. Someone's pen clicked nervously. Ray didn't blink. You think I'd be reckless enough to log in from an unsecured dorm? Ward's tone turned acid. Reckless, no. Ghosts, yes. She leaned forward, voice dropping an octave. Until we understand this breach, your access is frozen. 3 simple words, but they slammed like a gavel. Ray, who had moved unshackled through sealed corridors and black vaults for years, was now locked out of her own past. Ray didn't flinch. She stepped back, eyes still on the screen. I'll find out who touched the ghost, and why it still knows my name. She thought I'd destroy her. I gave her a mission instead. The air in the strategy room sat heavy, thick with recycled oxygen and dim red light. The underground walls, plated with steel, muted even the sound of breathing. Ray stood with arms crossed behind her back, unmoving. The silence had gone on too long for comfort. Casey, seated at the edge of the table like a student caught cheating, couldn't decide whether to speak or run. But then Ray spoke. Low, clinical. Did you open it out of curiosity or suspicion? Casey blinked, startled. Her voice cracked as she answered. Because I didn't think you had anything important. She winced at her own words. Ray didn't react, at least not outwardly. She just walked slowly toward the center console, letting her boots echo with deliberate precision. I activated a system, Ray said, tapping a key on the panel. Not to let anyone find out, but to call the right person back. The room dimmed further as a new screen lowered from the ceiling. A long string of characters scrolled across. Log entries, breach reports, mirrored security pings. Casey couldn't decipher any of it, but Ray could. She stood tall and still, the way mountains stand before a storm. Then Ray turned and gestured to the side door. Come with me. Casey hesitated, but something in Ray's gaze made resistance feel irrelevant. She followed. Down a short corridor, another door opened with a press of Ray's thumb. Inside, the Technical Monitoring Center. Screens flickered across every wall. Access logs, network pulses, retinal scans in motion. A heartbeat of data. You're not being punished, Ray said calmly, walking to the largest terminal. But you're not getting off easy. Casey hovered awkwardly behind her. Why are you showing me this? Because knowing where the ghosts live is the first step to facing them, Ray replied. You're going to help me find who's really behind that access attempt. Casey looked overwhelmed, unsure whether this was discipline, trust, or both. She took the seat Ray motioned to and tried to keep her hands from shaking. Start with the ID string. Break it down in pairs. The old code structure will show you what year it was embedded. A silence passed as Casey stared at the screen. Then the door behind them clicked. Sergeant Hill walked in, tossing a manila file down beside the terminal. Its cover was stamped with old red ink. 2018 Access Request. Deletion pending. There was a holdup, he said, meeting Ray's eyes. An error. Paperwork delayed the deletion. I kept a copy because... He paused. Because I didn't trust the system to do the right thing. Ray nodded once. Nothing more. Casey picked up the file with slow fingers. Her eyes tracked down the page, and then stopped. Her breath caught as she read the signature line. Initiated by Mrs. General Donovan. Everything in her expression cracked. Shock, betrayal, confusion colliding all at once. She looked up at Ray, but Ray had already turned away, gaze fixed on a screen that suddenly seemed 1,000 miles away. You weren't erased by failure. You were deleted by blood. The house was too quiet for comfort. Not the sleepy kind of silence, but surgical, stripped of warmth. Casey slipped through the back door, careful not to trigger the chime alarm, just like she had as a teenager sneaking out. But this time, she was sneaking in. The floorboards creaked under her socks. The hallway, lined with carefully curated photographs, Casey's graduation, Casey's awards, Casey and their mother at the Capitol building, stared back at her like a museum of selective memory. Ray wasn't in a single frame. Her mother's study door was unlocked. Inside, books in perfect order, a desk untouched by clutter, and one drawer with a subtle fingerprint smudge. It opened smoothly. She found it between a pile of old personnel forms and polished brass paperweights. A manila envelope with the ROC seal. Inside, on crisp official letterhead, was the letter. Subject exhibits prolonged instability and demonstrates poor adaptability under combat simulation. Given recurring behavioral flags and familial strain, I recommend the revocation of all program clearances and termination from the active ROC trajectory. Signed, Mrs. Eleanor Donovan. Casey sat back slowly, as if the floor might vanish beneath her. The letter didn't accuse Ray of insubordination. It didn't mention disobedience. It cited strain and instability, code words that covered personal betrayal with military jargon. Meanwhile, miles away at Fort Maxon, Ray leaned over her terminal. Lines of code blinked methodically. She filtered the logs through 3 different legacy systems, matching access patterns. One signature popped, the clean wipe protocol from 6 years ago, and the one triggered this week. Same structure, same syntax, same origin, just shifted from ROC Central to a residential IP, traceable directly to Casey's assigned machine. She stared at the match. No anger, just the kind of stillness before a storm. She picked up her phone and called. Casey's voice was raw. "Ray? Have you sent any letters to the ROC recently?" Ray asked. "Even." Casey froze. "Number never?" Ray didn't press. "Then someone used your system." Casey's knuckles whitened. "I found the letter." Ray was silent. "I'm going to ask her," Casey added, breath catching. She hung up before Ray could respond. In the living room, the overhead light flicked on. Her mother stood at the edge of the hallway, arms folded in a robe, eyes unreadable. Casey stepped forward. "Did you do that to Ray?" Her mother didn't blink. "Your sister is too sensitive. The army is not for her. You—" Her voice sharpened. "You have discipline. You stay the course. I made the choice to protect the Donovan name." Casey felt something inside her finally, permanently crack. Later, back in her old bedroom, she opened the box of childhood keepsakes. Medals, toy soldiers, notes Ray had written. Beneath a folded corner of fabric, her fingers brushed something cold. An old PHX-3 team code tag. And tucked just behind it, a tiny voice recorder. The label read, "July 17th, ROC, my final night." She clicked play. Ray's voice came through. Calm, tired, and devastating. "They said I was too unpredictable to lead, but I never lost a single unit. They wanted me gone. I came back not for justice, but to close the file myself." The room was sealed, tension woven into the recycled air like static. Ray stood alone at the head of the dark wood conference table, a digital interface glowing beneath her fingers. Behind her, the command council sat, watching, judging, calculating, but not speaking. She laid the chain of data out, line by line. 2 delete requests, one in 2018, authorized by an insider. One in 2024, triggered accidentally, but made possible because the first had never fully gone through. She made no excuses, just the facts. Colum Ward leaned forward, tapping his fingers together. "You held back," he said flatly. "You didn't reveal your rank. You didn't demand reinstatement." Ray met his gaze without flinching. "Because I wasn't here for recognition. I was here to confirm what was erased. And by whom." Before he could respond, Casey stood up from her seat near the rear. Her voice shook, but she didn't sit back down. "The second access? That was me. I opened the file. I triggered the breach." The room shifted. A few gasps. One cough. Casey didn't look away. But General Donovan never used that against me. She showed me what it meant to carry weight without being seen. Ward said nothing, just gave a slow, tight nod. Your access is restored, General. PHX-3 is yours again, if you want it. Ray paused, then shook her head. My work, she said softly, is never where the light is. The next morning, the military airport felt deserted under a cloudy sky. Ray stood near the transport plane, black jacket in hand, gaze distant. Hill approached but didn't speak. He just offered a quiet nod, the kind you gave someone you didn't need to explain yourself to. Casey came running last, clutching something in her hand. The old ROC badge. You don't want medals or monuments, she said, breathless. But someone has to remember. For the next girl with no seat at the table. Ray took the badge, closed her fingers around it gently, then stepped into the plane. As the engines roared to life, Ray looked out the window. One last glance at Fort Maxon. I wasn't erased, her mind whispered. I just became untraceable by choice. They wanted me gone. I came back not for justice, but to close the file myself. The room was sealed, tension woven into the recycled air like static. Ray stood alone at the head of the dark wood conference table, a digital interface glowing beneath her fingers. Behind her, the command council sat, watching, judging, calculating, but not speaking. She laid the chain of data out, line by line. 2 delete requests, one in 2018, authorized by an insider. One in 2024, triggered accidentally, but made possible because the first had never fully gone through. She made no excuses, just the facts. Colum Ward leaned forward, tapping his fingers together. You held back, he said flatly. You didn't reveal your rank. You didn't demand reinstatement. Ray met his gaze without flinching. Because I wasn't here for recognition. I was here to confirm what was erased, and by whom. Before he could respond, Casey stood up from her seat near the rear. Her voice shook, but she didn't sit back down. The second access? That was me. I opened the file. I triggered the breach. The room shifted. A few gasps. One cough. Casey didn't look away. But General Donovan never used that against me. She showed me what it meant to carry weight without being seen. Ward said nothing, just gave a slow, tight nod. Your access is restored, General. PHX-3 is yours again, if you want it. Ray paused, then shook her head. My work, she said softly, is never where the light is. The next morning, the military airport felt deserted under a cloudy sky. Ray stood near the transport plane, black jacket in hand, gaze distant. Hill approached but didn't speak. He just offered a quiet nod, the kind you gave someone you didn't need to explain yourself to. Casey came running last, clutching something in her hand, the old ROC badge. You don't want medals or monuments, she said, breathless. But someone has to remember, for the next girl with no seat at the table. Ray took the badge, closed her fingers around it gently, then stepped into the plane. As the engines roared to life, Ray looked out the window. One last glance at Fort Maxon. I wasn't erased, her mind whispered. I just became untraceable by choice. In the shadows of silence and denial, one woman proved that truth doesn't need applause to win. Her quiet return wasn't for revenge, but to ensure the lies that buried her never rise again. When courage meets injustice with patience, the outcome is not just victory. It's clarity. Like the final light in a sealed room, justice may come late, but it reveals everything. If you felt this story speak to you, like, share, subscribe, and comment 1 below to show your support for those who choose truth over silence.